Welcome back to Trinity Ironworks. Today I'm going to be showing you guys how I start my coal forge. Alright, so we're going to want to go in here to our fancy little kindling box. And we're going to get all of the kindling that we have split. Well, most of it. Kindling reserve's getting a little low. So we'll get ourselves a little bit of kindling here to be able to start our fire. And actually, I might just use all of it. I think I'm going to. It's the last of the kindling. We need to cut some more. So what I do is I just go ahead and I stack my kindling in my fire pot right above my tuyere. Just like so. And I'll show you guys what I do next once I have it all stacked. So I've got my kindling all stacked in here in the fire pot, all nice and neat into a little log cabin. And so what I go ahead and do now is I go ahead and I take some of this finer coke that I have laying here on the hearth from the last fire, and I just go ahead and I start to just pile this up onto there. So we get a little bit more of that. We'll try and find some of the finer coke here. The finer coke, you want to start with your pile. You want to start piling your finer coke on top of your kindling first, because that stuff will light easier than a bigger piece of coke like this, or a bigger piece of coke like this here. This finer stuff is going to light and burn hot much easier than a big piece of coke will when you're starting your fire. So we'll just go ahead and pile all of this on here. We'll put a little bit down here into the sides of the kindling so that that will catch and start to burn. You guys don't have to be fancy about this. Just kind of stack your kindling so that there's going to be enough air that's going to flow through the wood and flow through the coke to be able to catch it all on fire and get it lit and hot and burning. You don't have to be fancy, obviously. I'll show that to you right now. You don't have to be fancy about it. You just got to kind of pile it on there. And the biggest part is just making sure that you have enough air that's going to flow through your wood and flow through your coke. So we get a little bit more coke on here. Get a little more coke piled up on top of this kindling. We grab some more of our fines and throw on top of the pile. And we'll put one little piece up there to try and catch that one. So I'll show you guys what I do next. So you need about a cup of this liquid. You need yourself a bunch of kerosene, and you need about 1 cup worth. I just went ahead and I cut the top off of a sparkling water can. Went ahead and cut the top off of that. That's my measuring unit. So we'll get our kerosene here poured into our cup. And then we're going to pour it on the fire. So you guys can see here I have about 1 cup's worth of kerosene in my little aluminum can. And we're just going to go ahead and pour that kerosene onto that kindling. Pour it all down onto that kindling. You want to hit your kindling first, and then whatever kerosene that you have left, you can go ahead and pour onto your coke. And nice dry coke like this is like a sponge. It soaks up whatever liquid hits it. It is almost exactly like a sponge. So that coke is going to absorb all of that kerosene that you poured onto it, and it's going to help burn hotter and light any of your other coke much easier, as well as your kindling. So we're going to go ahead and let that kerosene soak into that kindling, soak into that coke for a couple of minutes, and then we'll go ahead and light it and get the fire ready. So I went ahead and grabbed the old handy dandy trusty Bic lighter. You don't need a blowtorch for this. I mean, if you really want to use a blowtorch for this job, you can. If you're not using kerosene, I would recommend a blowtorch. But if you are using some sort of starting fluid, you don't need a torch. It kind of wastes gas in the torch, and then it's just a little bit unreasonable. Bic lighter is really all you need, so we'll go down here into the bottom of our kindling and go ahead and light her up. Now, I'm gonna let that burn, and I'm gonna let a lot of that wood start to catch before I even start adding any of that air. So we'll just watch her burn here for a minute. Let some of that wood catch. And now we can start to add a little bit of air. We can finally start to add some air to our fire. You don't need a lot of air when you're first starting. That air can put out your flame from your kerosene, and you don't want to do that. You want to give the wood time to catch, and you want to give the coke time to get warmed up and ready to have air burn to it. You want to have your coke warmed up for that. So now we can add a little bit more air now that our wood is catching more. And as that kindling catches and as that kerosene burns, that kerosene is the force of that air against that burning kerosene and against that burning wood is going to start to catch your coke on fire. And then we can go ahead, once we have a nice coal bed, we can go ahead and add some more coke into our fire. So we're going to try and keep our air going. We'll go ahead and scrape up all of the surrounding coke and the little bit of green coal that is left on the hearth from the previous fire. We'll go ahead and scrape all of that coke up, push it onto our fire, and we'll get some air rolling to it. Those flames from our little coal bed down in the bottom of our fire pot catch up into the coke. They're going to light that other coke on fire, and they're going to start to coke up whatever little bit of green coal was left. So I just get this coke bed rolling really hot, and then I go ahead and I start to add in a little bit of green coal, and I'll show you guys that step here just in a minute. So I went ahead here and I poured some of our green coal onto the hearth of our forge. And what we're going to do, we're just going to go ahead and slowly start to scrape some of that green coal onto our fire. And we're going to get that green coal coked up into what is called coke. So we'll get that scraped up onto there. And we'll slowly start to add more green coal onto our fire as our fire cokes up the green coal that is already on there. So I want to go ahead and just take a minute to explain a little bit of the coal burning process for you guys who don't understand what I'm talking about here. What is green coal? What is coke? What is all of that? So green coal in essence is coke with a bunch of impurities in it. It's just coal. It's just plain coal that's been mined out of the ground and shipped off and sold to somebody like me. So then I go ahead and I burn that coal. And when I burn that coal, I am burning all of the impurities out of that coal, and I'm turning it into coke. Coke is almost pure carbon. It is coal with all of the impurities burned off of it, and it burns extremely hot. Now they do make industrial coke, but I don't have any of that right now, so I just make my own on my fire with my coal. So you go from green coal, then to coke, and then that coke burns down into the bottom of your fire pot and turns into ash, and it turns into clinker. Clinker is a mixture of the oxygen that is burned from the air, the impurities in the coal, the scale that falls off of your metal, and coal ash. It is all of those things combined together to make the nasty little thing that builds up around your tware and your forge called a clinker. You don't want that. That stuff is trash. I actually like to call it the cancer spots of the fire. So we've got our green coal. As you can see here, our green coal is coking up. And the reason that they call it green coal is when you are burning the impurities out of the green coal, you're burning that sulfur off, you're burning off any of the impurities that are built into that coal over the years. When you're burning that off, it produces a green smoke, at least bituminous coal does. So when you are burning those impurities out and you are coking up that coal, it burns a green smoke at times, a green sulfury smoke, and that's the reason that this fresh coal is called green coal. So once you burn that green coal, you burn off all those impurities, it gets turned into coke. So you guys can see all of that blackish, greenish, dark grayish smoke that's coming off of that green coal right now that is coking up. And that's why it's called green coal. This isn't the best example. The lighting is a little bit off, but you can see, hopefully in the video, that that coal is a little bit greenish. It's darkish, blackish, greenish with a little bit of dark gray in it. And that's all of those impurities burning off of that green coal turning into coke. So you guys can see now that that green coal is now coked up. It went from that over into this nice stuff. All of this coke, it has burned off about 75% of the impurities off of that green coal, and now we're turning it into coke. And once that coke is burned off pretty much all of those impurities, we are ready to start forging. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope you learned something about how to start a coal forge. I hope you learned something about the coal burning process, or if you just liked watching the flames and the smoke shoot out of the stack. Anyway, I hope you learned something. I hope it was fun to watch. Please make sure to like, subscribe, share it with someone if you think they might find this interesting, if you think they might enjoy this type of stuff. I love all of you guys. Forge on.